favoritism. If anybody needs to do anything to be themselves and true to themselves, they can do it. This is a safe and happy space.
Oh yeah, of course you've not encountered the all new Kieran and Sharon talking about now that we've adopted Ben.
All new. I've been carrying and sharing for 40 years now, babes.
Oh dear.
What? We don't want anyone to feel that anything that is said has got any kind of unhappy or darkened edge to it. We're all like happy bunnies in the field.
We are. We absolutely are.
With just a little bit of myxomatosis in there in the middle. Hello and welcome to a Talking About special. Jason's, oh look at them, they're all so excited. It's just going to be me tonight though. A Talking About special looking at Doctor Who and the power of the Doctor. Yeah, I did the voice. Early doors, I am Paul or P-Bal, and I am joined by...
Hello, it's 80s throwback Tegan.
Hello, it's Jason. Not quite an 80s throwback.
No, 60s.
Rude. You're starting already and we've not even started.
Remember, be kind. Who else are we joined by?
Ben.
Hey! Oh, sorry, so I was distracted by the fireworks out the window then. It was like they were for Ben. They timed up, if you could hear that. Probably couldn't. I like the fact that James has melanged the hair of the new Tegan with the outfit of the old. It's a tribute to both eras of that beloved character.
Yes, very much so.
So, who would like to start with do we have an introduction about what this is and what are we talking about? I could do Delphon for the next 20 minutes, it's fine.
Go on, Ben. I thought you were going to start.
We are here to talk about the power of the Doctor, which was transmitted on the BBC last night and which we have all watched, hopefully. And which we
I supposed to have watched
it.
Name a story Jason has watched for one of these reviews.
The Pyramids of Mars. That's all I'm telling you. The Pyramids of Mars.
Anyway, back to the sensible words of Ben.
Okay. What do you want me to say? Do you want me to start off?
Yes, you start on it, Ben. You start on it.
I'll start. Right. So, going into this, obviously, if people remember when they watched our review of the last trailer, that we were all a little bit hesitant and all a little bit like, I don't know, is this going to let us down like the last special? Is it going to be good? Is it going to be not? Well, I'd like to say that I was pleasantly surprised. I did enjoy it. Yes, it's got problems. Yes, it's got a plot which is very difficult to follow. But I actually did enjoy it. I thought particularly we were given a lot of classic stuff all throughout the episode. Both doctors, companions, all sorts of things. So so I was really happy with that. There was lots of in-jokes, lots of references that we would have understood, like particularly like the classic series fans would have understood. So yeah, I was very happy with it. Yeah. Next.
It's a proper old centennial piece, though, isn't it? It really does nod so well back to the classic era for me, and gotta say, I think they scored a bit of a hit with this one.
I think, John, it was just like all the other Centennial specials we had. I thought, didn't you?
Don't.
I was waiting for him to say, I thought it was a good script.
I do. I don't mention scripts anymore. We don't go there.
Well, I mean, I'm happy for anyone to talk about the script if they've got something to say about it.
I would just echo a little bit of what Ben just said, because I think when we did the review of the trailer, our reaction to the trailer, I have to confess, I was like, this looks like it's going to be not really a celebration of Jodie. It felt like it was going to be a kind of season 20-esque, missing the beat, sort of bring back what we can to, celebrate the past. And actually, I would say on that respect, I was pleasantly surprised that it didn't go OTT on that. I felt it was going to be crammed full of stuff, and actually you would have a story which didn't really feature Jodie. It was more about the people returning. And I quite liked the way they sort of introduced the doctors and the companions. I mean, it was good that Tegan and Ace featured throughout. They weren't just almost a bit of clickbait to get you to watch the episode because they were going to be in it for 2 minutes. They were in it throughout the entirety. It was quite nice to see the reaction to them meeting Jodie. Then you had I have to say, stand out for me is probably the scenes with their doctors, where the Jodie hologram changed into their doctor hologram, and you had those. And again, it was a very short scene. It wasn't protracted. It was just just a moment where they got to speak to their former doctor. Some really nice bits in it. I have to say, though, it is a Chibnall script, and it comes with all the problems of a Chibnall script. So it's not, I feel he hasn't necessarily learnt from his time in Doctor Who, because I felt the plot was overly complicated, convoluted. I had so many questions. I've got 2 pages of notes, and 1 whole page is questions which just end or start with why this, why that, how was the Master getting the Daleks to join forces with him and the Cyber Lords? They would, I would just sat there going, I appreciate that it's, throw loads of stuff at it and it's action, but I think that comes at a cost, and I think you could have stripped off half of that, and you probably would have had a much better story. I just felt there were plot strands that for me, it was like, why were the Daleks there? Other than the scene with Ace and the baseball bat, that was the payoff for including the Daleks all the way along. Maybe to see Jodie sat in a Dalek being captured, but it didn't really have any other purpose other than some plot later on, which is fine. But I'd much rather they had focused on a cohesive story. Why was Vinda there? Vinda turned up from a wormhole to save that child that they'd got off the train, and left without the child. Just like, she fixed the ship, and he was like, bye, I'm off. And again, he was only really there to shoot the Master later on. It was like, it's like they knew how they wanted to end it, but it was like, how do we? I know. Let's just get Vinda coming through a random wormhole so he can just be there on board the TARDIS when this happens. I felt there were lots of pieces that weren't necessarily placed in the right way, if that makes sense. I thought it was a better Jodie story than some of the previous ones, but I still felt that it was a bit of a mismatch in some areas.
Didn't they say that the child wasn't a child? It was a perception of what you imagined the squiggly thing to be. So there wasn't a child. It was how you perceive it.
But I was beginning to think it was going to be the payoff for the timeless child that never actually really even happened.
Exactly. And again, there's, I was saying before we started recording, I went back and watched the Cyber Time Lord episode. I watched The Flux before watching this. And there's so many things that were sort of, half potentially sort of mentioned in those stories that never came to be anything. At the end of Flux, you had this mysterious creature, Time, who caused Azure and what's his face to ascend, and then said, "I'm coming for you, Doctor."
But I'm kind of glad it didn't have that baggage, though, James, to be honest, because I think Chibnall had written himself into a cul-de-sac with all of that, and it was all just a bit nonsense. And the fact that we didn't have to endure any of that, all those various strands of plot in this, I think this is a better installment for it.
But do you not think, in some ways, that this was a largely convoluted and plotless thing for an hour and a half? That sort of just basically, if I was going to be very unkind, and I didn't, I mean, I've not really liked a lot of Jodie's, and we found it quite engaging here, and we watched it and sort of nodded along with it. It made absolutely no sense whatsoever. And this is Chibnall, who's had such a rough time with the fans all hating it. Not all of them. There's a very small dedicated audience that love Jodie and blah, blah, blah. But he's had a very rough time with the fans. This felt like it was, I want to go out with everyone saying, he brought back William Russell. He brought this. It felt like he was playing to the Doctor Who fans in the stalls and not the audience about. If I were Johnny Smith and I just watched Strictly, I don't know whether I would understand who Adric was when you're having a tearful moment with the Fifth Doctor. It was all very, if I wrote this in my bedroom, this would be great. And again, I sound like I didn't enjoy it, and it was fine for me. I'm a Doctor Who fan. I've watched it for 30 years. I understand who all these things are. But there were lots of points where I was just sat thinking, oh, crikey, if I was sat watching this as a casual, just a viewer who wanted to enjoy drama, would I have to go and Google who Aunt Vanessa was, or would I? There were just sort of things where it's like what we used to find with references to the past is that if they came in, they were very cleverly done, and if you didn't know them, you could sort of understand from the scenario. With this, it was very much you need to have your Doctor Who hat on. You need to be a Doctor Who fan to watch this, and so whilst you could say it's a triumph for Chris because he's had a positive reaction, is also his sort of ultimate failing because he's gone completely. It's the Boris Johnson of or we're going to call him he's more like Liz, isn't he, with the U-turn? Because we had I'm starting Doctor Who with the 13th Doctor. We're going to have no references to the past. This was nothing but references to the past. Who can I bring back? Who can I call up? Who's going to come? Has Tom answered the email yet? Tom hasn't answered the email. Can we call the office? Will Tom come and do it? No, Tom's not doing it. It just felt very much like that, and that's great, and it didn't overshadow Jodie in some ways. But then I wonder whether that's because Jodie's wasn't as impactful as it could have been. But I don't know. I actually, surprisingly, and I'll let someone else speak, I found that this was probably Jodie's most convincing performance in this after the fact, because she'd taken it down, and it was kind of like she wasn't necessarily in command of it, which is a shame because she still needs to have that authority. But she wasn't doing all this stuff. She'd really brought it in, and I just thought, I think there's a really good Doctor here. I think you could be really good. And that's the first time I've sort of seen that and thought, she can do this. And that sounds patronising. It's not meant to, but she just needed someone to say, this is it. This is how you're going for it. Let's keep you on this, or you don't have to keep doing all this and that. Because she wasn't in this, and I thought it was all the better for it.
When she said, "I want more time," I was actually like, I want you to have more time. You're absolutely right. It was, I think, one of the better Jodie performances, and I think because she had much more. It was, as I say, my worry was that it was going to be Jodie goes out with a whimper, and it's all stuff for the fans, and it's a tribute rather than a send off for her. And I feel she got a send off. I do feel that I really, and I know I talked about this previously about the love interest between her and Yaz, and again they dialed that right back, having sort of dialed it right up in the Sea Devils. They dialed it right back. So, and Yaz, actually, I thought it was the strongest episode for Yaz during this, where the Doctor. We'll talk about some of the plot in a minute, but where the Doctor had gone and she was having to deal with the Master, and I thought it was his better performance as well. Apart from when he was like Rasputin, sure we'll talk about the disco scene, but I felt that he gave in some parts his best performance. So I felt the three of them got a good payoff in this live. I mean, ignoring some of the weird and wonderful script, some of the plot strands, I felt that actually the three of them got quite a good ending, if that's the last you're gonna see of his master and of Yaz.
But don't you think, unfortunately, it's too little too late? Like, we're getting great performances now, and now it's like, but this is the end. I do agree. I think Jodie, this is probably one of her better performances. I think also because she was allowed to sort of breathe a bit more and be a bit more doctorish and not be that dithery character, which is like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, like this sort of thing. And it's like, come on, woman, you need to take charge. You just need to be someone who's strong and leading people. Whereas it just wasn't like that before. So I think, yeah, she's, this was definitely a lot more, much improved on previous, for, as you say, for not only her but for Yaz as well. And thank God they dialed back the bloody Sonic as well. I thought, oh my God, this is every other episode previously, and it's like, I'm glad they did that at least. I hopefully they listened to people complaining and said nope.
What I did find amusing was there was still some scenes where Jodie was explaining everything, excited Labrador sort of exposition. But then later on, when they had all the sort of companions back, they were all going, "Why does she never explain anything?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, she spent 10 minutes explaining a scene earlier on," and they're all like, "Oh, she's still not explaining anything." And I honestly thought Chibnall was sat there trolling the fans, because I was just like, you've got this whole scene where she just goes, "I haven't got time, haven't got time, haven't got time, haven't got time." But earlier on, you had this whole sequence where she was explaining to Yaz everything that was going on in front of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would say Sasha, this was without doubt his best performance. And I do, is it cruel? I do wonder whether sitting on the sofa watching Roger, when he's like, he's very still, isn't he? I wonder whether he's gone, oh, okay. Maybe less is going to be more, because he was still maniacal, but he was just that little bit under. It was a bit more hushed and a bit less arms about, jerky, I'm crazy. It felt like it was so much better tone, which I think, and I will see whether you will agree, because I don't know if you will all like this or not. I think the fact that he was playing it under helped with his little disco dance not being. Because I think if he'd been the whole and then done the dance, he'd been like, oh my days, what's going on here? Whereas I think because it was within the schematic of him just being a bit gaga or whatever, I just felt like it fitted all right. And he was quite, again, when he did it, was quite serious with how he did the disco moves with it. He didn't parody it. And I think we've had a lot of parody in the show, and I think it was quite nicely toned down for that, even though that was a campus tits, wasn't it, really?
It was. But I mean, the bit where they walk in and he's doing their seismology lecture, and the whole audience has been killed off, and they're all miniatures. He doesn't lose a beat. He's sort of like he's talking to an empty room. The Doctor and Yaz walk in, and he's just like, he just gives a little wave, and it is so much more controlled when he is the Doctor as well. That I found that to be probably his most chilling performance, because he was like, Yaz, I need a companion. But if you take a step out of line, he just said, I'll reduce you down to, he literally just said, I will shrink you. But then was like turned around and goes, come on, let's have an adventure. It was so, when he would, I thought his performances, he had so many nuances to his performance in this one. It was so good to see, and to step away from the maniacal, mad energy. And I think that helped Jodie as well, because sometimes the two of them are like two Labrador puppies running around each other. And I think they'd all concentrated their energy, so it was good.
And I was actually going to also add as well that I think that the fact that he's playing it down allows the interaction between the Doctor and the Master to really shine in this, I think.
As we've got the Fugitive Doctor box set and the War Doctor box set finished, do we now get the Master Doctor box set with Sasha and the question mark top on the front? Is that going to be a thing whilst he was left on the rock for a couple of hours? Is that going to be, he went and had Master Doctor adventures?
But again, and then he was playing the recorder. He was playing the second Doctor's recorder.
I don't know. Were there points where actually it kind of just lipped into we're going through Peter Haining's celebration here now, and it's a little. I think my cringiest best was when he did it's the Master's Dalek plan, or should it be the Dalek's Master? I was like, oh, that felt like something you put in the draft, read it back, and go, no, that doesn't fit. It doesn't sound like anything other than you clunkily making a joke reference. It didn't fit into the dialogue.
But oddly, I liked that kind of stuff that was played out in this. And okay, I appreciate it's not going to play to the audience who aren't Doctor Who fans, but I came into this with a very, very, very low, in fact, to be honest, it was like a -100 expectation of how this was going to be. And coming out of it as a fan the other side of this, and I appreciate that it's got its weaknesses in parts, but I felt like, for the first time in a long time, pleased or happy to be a Doctor Who fan because I actually enjoyed it. I'm not going to read too much into this. I'm just going to say I sat there and actually for 90 minutes, all right, it was a little bit cobblers in the plot as we came through it. There are some things in there that, you might cringe. But do you know what? I felt at the end of it, I had a smile on my face and I thought, actually, that's probably one of the best performances and one of the best episodes of Chibnall's era. And I know it's completely against what he set out to do, but you know what? Perhaps he should go travel back in time and have a look at what he should have done, because actually that's probably where we should have been through all of it.
But do you not think there's a huge element of that comes from the fact that you like Ace or Sophie, you like Tegan, so it's very difficult as a fan, so a classic fan, to not have those sort of cores of emotion, because all of a sudden the Seventh Doctor's back with Ace and the Fifth Doctor's back with. It's a little bit Five Doctory, isn't it? It doesn't have to be done well to trigger those little emotions. So, but you can't make a show like that. You know, Dimensions in Time is incredible because it's 15 minutes of nothing but that. But if you had 2 seasons where every week, you had Fifi from Happiness Patrol turning up and Pat Butcher, it would just be strange. It sort of works for this, but for a very specific audience, I would say.
I think it was good, though, that you actually got, for example, some of, like Kate, for example, I felt this was, again, much better. I mean, when we reviewed The Flux, it was like, why was Kate there? She spent the last, and again, just rewatched it, spent that last episode, she emerged from the tunnels and said, I'm defending Earth. And that was pretty much all she did. It was such a waste of the character. And I felt, again, Kate got more time to breathe. Kate got time to show her resolve. And, there was a wonderful moment when they arrested Sasha's master and he was walking through, and you had the quip about Auntie Vanessa, you had the quip about, oh, hi Ace, or is it Dorothy? And then you had, your father was an idiot, I think it was, as he turned to Kate. And there was, but Kate got so much more to do. Do
you not think she needed to give a response to that? Because I thought that because they, when he said, "Oh, have you got your auntie in a doll's house?" and they got to give them. When he said your father was an idiot, did you know what she needed to say? My father beat you, I'll beat you. Did she not need some kind of response rather than just go, yeah, he was actually. It felt like that. Just that moment just felt like she just didn't say anything, and it felt like she wasn't clever enough to say something back to him. It was. I get that you could probably say, well, she didn't want to rise to the prisoner's bait, blah, blah, blah. but it just felt in that moment you needed a bam just to put him down, because in honesty, I because Sophie's we used to be half cat kind of thing. That's a sort of come back, and Janet could have done something a bit like You Revolting Little Man. We could have had that return, couldn't we? That would have been a nice nod. I don't know. It just that moment I felt we could have had something there. I wonder whether they asked Osgood, because Osgood was on the phone, wasn't she, when she went under what? So it would have been nice maybe when they went to the Master in the lecture hall, which wasn't in Cardiff, it was in Milan or something, wasn't it? If they'd have arrived there and Osgood had been the person that was on the spot or something, and could have just shoehorn that in maybe. It seemed odd that she wasn't there, having been referenced in the last one, unless she's just sat at home reading Richard's books with him.
That's quite possible.
I think it's a shame that we didn't get to see, because at the very beginning we have Ace on the phone to Tegan, but how did they meet? That's the thing. Obviously, in the original series, they never met. So how did they suddenly meet up from where they were left when they were left? So I would have liked to have seen maybe a bit of backstory to that, unless we're going to get.
I think if you go back and watch Dimensions in Time.
I think they're probably on Facebook, and it said people you might know, and she's gone. Banker, I'll add her, I don't mind. And then she's gone, hi, and they've just a little chat on Facebook. That's how they've met. They haven't met in real life. They've only ever met on video call.
Yeah. But didn't you think it's strange with Tegan saying, oh, I've got sent a Russian doll like this, and it's like, that's a character options figure, clearly. What are you talking about?
I've got to say it's a prototype figure, and I'm giving it approval. I've got three strikes on the approval, and I don't like this first one. Yeah, I mean, I think we would literally be here all night if you tried to make sense of all these different little bits of what I mean, what anyone was really trying to, why the Master had put his face into the pictures and stuff, or why the pictures have been taken down, or why the Master killed all the seismologists and got the Daleks under the volcano, and where Graham came from to appear in the volcano.
No. It's just, I mean, that again, just these little plot strands where Ace turns around the corner and there's Graham. But again, that little scene between them is such a little sweet scene where, he's like, oh, there's these tin creatures and we've got to do something about them. And she's like, yeah, you should have seen how I dealt with them in 1963. And he's like, how old are you? Yeah, it's such a wonderful little... And do you know what? You're absolutely right. I left watching this feeling happy, sad. I felt that when you look back at previous showrunners, and I know we are about to come back to Russell T Davies. Russell T Davies did emotion and really, really well. He really made you care about the characters, and we've been critical in the past where Chibnall's writing, you don't really get to know a character very well, or the characters aren't very well fleshed out. But I felt in here, there were scenes where they were very short, but they actually had quite a lot of emotional impact. Like the doctors talking to their companions, like the Graham and Ace. It was immediate. There was a chemistry straight away that we've been missing in previous Jodie episodes, and not necessarily because of the acting, but because there's just not been much to really build on. And in our classic season reviews, we've been talking about how a character might appear for just a couple of minutes and then get killed off, and we actually feel something for that character because we understand that character. And I felt there was a lot more of that in here, which is great to see, and a shame that it's come in the last episode for Jodie, because it was almost like, I some of the other bits to aside, there was some bits where I was just like, I really like this. I'm really engaged in this, and emotionally invested. And I know a lot of people will be for various reasons for different doctors, but even that scene where the the Doctor is talking to the previous Doctors, and they morph into each other, which I just thought was a brilliant way of bringing them in. That sent a chill, even the tiny little thing like the Paul McGann not being in robes. And so Sylvester goes, yeah, there's always one, isn't there? Like this. And he's like, we're a manifestation of our subconscious. Get over it. Just little bits like that. And you're just like, I know this character. And I just thought it was really, really good.
I'm not quite sure why they didn't just write Dan out in the Sea Devils. It seemed really odd to just have that 5-minute intro and then go, after I've decided I don't really want to travel here anymore. Okay, bye-bye, hun. Have fun. Yeah. Give your grass to your mum and dad, who we had for 3 minutes on screen and were both clearly wasted.
I wrote that down. I was like, no family cameo. And no, because he said I'm going on a date, and there was no cameo from Diane either. I'm assuming that they hooked up at the end of Sea Devils when he makes that phone call.
Oh, she blew him out. Well, blew him out, not off. She blew him out. She said no, didn't she, at the end of that?
No, at the end of the Sea Devils, didn't she?
No, the Sea Devils, she's like, you had your chance, didn't she? Wasn't it a bit of a... It was a really odd, where it felt like she was going to say, yeah, let's do it. And she's like, no, you had your chance. Get back, huh?
Yeah, she didn't like him at the end. She was like...
She didn't like him in the flux, did she? Like, you were late. It's like... Things happened. Did you notice?
Mm.
I don't know. There were some odd parts because we sort of said, okay, well, Chibnall decided not to bother finishing off all the story threads that he'd started up, and the fob watch that she drops, I'll come back to you. But the Vinda coming in and Dan not going in the previous, because then you have Dan and Graham both doing the same lines together towards the end. It's kind of just felt like, well, I'm not sure why some elements were put into it when you could have just expanded on the massively fruity old cake you got already going on.
Then again, the writing I felt was better because as soon as Dan's visor got shot, then you saw his realization that actually I could die doing this, and
has it taken him that long?
It has, I mean, he's been involved in so many adventures, but you can see it on his face as as soon as he was sort of saved and brought back in, you could see, he had that moment before he stopped the train where you could see he was thinking about leaving the Doctor. I must admit, I was like, okay. I mean, at least he got that scene. At least he got to say goodbye and a reason why he was leaving. He wasn't just married off to someone like classic season. It's like, I've just met someone, I'm off. But I think you're right. Given the weird ending, it would have been more of a payoff, I think, to have him phone Diane and Diane say, well, actually come back to Earth because I miss you, and then done it like that.
And then when you look at the way that Yaz leaves then at the end of the story, and that again, it's very quick and it's very sudden, and you know it's coming, but it's obviously they get that nice touching scene when they're sat on top of the TARDIS, but then it's literally, I've dropped you off, you're in a park somewhere, that's it, you're on your own now.
I didn't mind that so much though. I felt I was really nervous about how that was going to go because of what felt like a shoehorned scene at the end of the Sea Devils, when we reviewed that, it felt like it was tacked on at the end, and it was actually quite uncomfortable. Whereas I felt with that, when they were sat on top of the TARDIS having an ice cream, watching the Earth, and Jodie's hand was still regenerating. It was very, very odd. I felt actually that was the two of them were very close, and she said, this time has been special and I'm glad I spent it with you. It was very sort of Lou Reed lyrics, but but she said, I've also loved being me as well. And I felt that going down the understated road was probably better than having Yaz bawl her eyes out and declare her undying love, you know, in a sort of Rose-esque way. I felt that was it. I think they left it too late to develop the storyline, and so what they did was let it down gently rather than build up any tension.
And I love this notion of they left it too late to develop this. It's like when did Chris come in? It's a bit like Rishi.
No, yeah, but
I'm going to fix the economy. I don't know who's been doing all this awful economic stuff these last few years, but I'll fix it now. It's kind of like it's just.
What I mean. It felt like it was tacked on last time, and so I'm glad that it wasn't. It had to go one way or another, and I'm glad they went this way, where it was obvious that they did have a lot of affection for each other, but it wasn't all sort of like, you're the love of my life, and I'm going to, you know, miss you so much. I thought it was a reasonable conclusion, and I thought because you'd seen Yaz as a much more stronger, independent person, flying the TARDIS on her own, you know, going around and collecting everybody and being quite Doctor-like. And there's a scene where they're in the volcano where Yaz says to the Doctor, "Be careful," and the Doctor says, "That's my line. That's what I do. You know, that's what I say." I think she's finally developed, you know, as a character. So I thought that was better.
When she went back to the TARDIS, I wanted a BBC microcomputer for her to look at the index file and the index file to work out how to fly the TARDIS. I think Mr. Chibnall had very much gone back and looked at his New Beginnings box set for some of this. The Master's TARDIS, that was very Logopolis, where it was all sort of half lit, and let's go into the other TARDIS that's not a TARDIS and all that sort of. Like, I think someone has very much had an afternoon watching that and thought, Tegan, let's get Tegan back. She must be on Earth somewhere. And I could just see the little shades of what he wanted there in that sort of setup. I suppose that is the big thing for everyone, isn't it? The Ace and Tegan must be the biggest thing about this. I suppose the Doctors, but I mean, they were sort of constantly through it, weren't they?
Yeah. Now, the thing about Tegan coming back, though, is that there's a bit where she goes up on the roof with Ace, and then she suddenly comes back down and thinks, "Oh, the Cybermen is all my fault," blah blah blah. So then she comes back, and then she says to Kate, "Oh, you know, I've had this, that, and the other, and I was an air hostess in the 80s." Blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, was she? Now, correct me if I'm wrong. In Logopolis, when she goes into the TARDIS accidentally, isn't she on her way to work, right? And then obviously she doesn't get to work, so we know what happens. And then she goes on all these adventures, try and get back to Heathrow, blah, blah, blah. And then she's left at the end of Time Flight, right? And then in Arc of Infinity, she says, "Oh, I was fired." Now, I don't think she really was an air hostess, was she? She was trying to be, but I don't think she actually got to be.
She had 45 days in the job, and she's still claiming the pension from it.
Exactly. Outrageous.
The funniest thing about that thing when she was like, "It's my fault," or, you know, I wanted to think back to, well, actually, we know when you left, Lo, and you said a lot of good people died today. They've died because of you today. That's the reason they've all died. Anyway,
I can't wait for her to reveal a snake tattoo.
It's funny because I suppose there's quite a lot of some of the actors in the part, but maybe there was a little bit more Janet in the Tegan this time round than maybe there's Tegan. And do you know? I think there were certain points. It was like that feels a bit more Janety than Tegan.
Yeah. They even got a lovely homage in from Terminus, because when Tegan fell down that lift shaft and then, you know, survived by who knows what, and then
rubber boots.
Yeah, of course, yeah, rubber boots. And then of course she goes down and then goes to try and, you know, do whatever on that instrument panel, and then suddenly a Cyberman breaks through and grabs her tit, just like the Lazars did in Terminus. It's like, hey, isn't that nice to do homage?
And the Hemivores have a grope of Sophie and Fenric, so it's there as well, isn't it? Doctor Who gropes are favourite discussion points. I thought there was a really sweet moment. I think perhaps the acest point that Sophie was when Kate did that line, she did very 80s, and she's like, "Thanks." There was that kind of sort of optimistic step round what was actually a put down. The positive, it was the very acey thing. Do you know what I mean?
Because doesn't she say she makes the quip about the baseball bat as well, doesn't she? Because does she say, "Oh, Beyonce stole all my moves" or something as she walks? She just like literally just says it deadpan and walks out to Tegan. He's like, "Do you always carry that with you?"
I mean, what one might question, were one questioning such things, but in Doctor Who, in the Remembrance of the Daleks, the baseball bat is augmented by the hand of Omega, which is why it's got the extra oomph to deck the Daleks, and then it breaks and it's done with, isn't it? So what's with this baseball bat? Or whilst the Cybermen now don't respond to the bullets, the Daleks are now a bit worse, and they respond to a baseball batting. I was hoping that we'd get the noise, but you couldn't have the noise with the baseball bat because it hasn't been done. But then why was it?
Yeah, the spark.
I thought it was a clever callback though for the gold bullets. I thought that was again just a little bit of a, you know, classic rubbing up against new series, sort of like, oh yeah, that was previously. We're not.
But then that's another of my bugbears that it's still happened in this one, where the Cybermen all appear out of the little character options figure that gets bigger, and then suddenly, the Cybermen suddenly appear. And then, it's great, yeah, Ace and Tegan grab the machine guns, like that sort of thing, and then they go, right, run. And again, the Cybermen shoot. And again, are they like stormtroopers? They can't shoot to save their lives. They can't hit anyone. No one can ever hit anyone. And everyone's just doing this, like, oh, that's all right, we'll be okay. I mean, Dan managed to get hit at the beginning in that train sequence, but they weren't able to.
Sophie and Janet are about 4 foot something, aren't they? They're coming up to 5 years. They're quite short.
Their heads.
They're under the radar, so they're doing that, and that makes them even shorter. That's how they get out of that.
Yeah, and to have all these missing guns, it makes for good telly, Ben.
Yeah, it does.
I think the other weird thing about the camp doily Cybermen is that Doctor Who, and I could be wrong in my understanding of the show, he regenerates when he's been as an induced trauma, so he's close to death, and the regeneration is what stops him from dying. So when they kill the Cybermen and then they regenerate, that's sort of misunderstanding the point of what the regeneration is, surely.
I don't think Cybermen should be regenerating anyway in general. So actually, that's a cobbler's bit of story that's been brought in, and that was in fact one of the cobbler bits of story that are still there.
She needed the catapult, didn't she? Where was the catapult and the gold coins?
Yeah, I was hoping though that when Yaz, and this was probably, I'll come on to it in a second. I'll go backwards in a sec, but I think when Yaz forced the de-regeneration using the regeneration energy from the Cybermen, I think that actually killed them off, didn't it? Because they were mid-regeneration when she used their energy. I guess my question is, why did the Master want to become the Doctor? I was just like, I was like, why? You know, previously the Master wanted to become the Doctor because the Master was on his last regeneration and wanted the rest of her regenerations. But he got the Cybermen to build an entire planet just to have the power source to force Jodie to regenerate, but at the same time to force her to regenerate into him.
He said he was going to go around and do bad things, and everyone think it was the Doctor.
He said he was going
to basically live troll her in person.
But it was such a convoluted thing. It
looked like the Death Star, though, didn't it? The planet.
It did.
It did look like the Death Star, and again, you know, that whole planet served only two purposes. One, which was to give the energy for the regeneration sequence, and then later on to give the ability to stop the Daleks from, you know, blowing up all the volcanoes around the Earth by turning them into steel. And that was it. You know, it was like,
I mean, Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit like I bless her. I thought she did the best with her part. The girl at the gallery, she gave a lot of air of mystery as to why the painting had been taken down. And
Yes.
it was like it's like hardly the stones of blood. This doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like, right, oh, some of the paintings need a lot of restoration. Why was she acting so coy when basically there was no reason? She should have just said, "Do you know what? It's been vandalised and we've taken it down." And that whole set would have been ruined because that would have been the truth of why it was taken down. Because someone had put the really bad Photoshop face on them. We howled at those pictures of the different paintings.
Yes, me too.
I thought she was going to say someone threw tomato soup and then super glued themselves to one of them. Because that's literally that would be so eerie.
Can you imagine? They should hear about the Tesco down the road. They're throwing milk over the floor and everything they have. Yeah.
It was with Ashad coming back. I know they've suddenly like, oh, he's back, and I killed him, and then they brought him back. But I think that was good because, unlike with the Cybermen, where they're just like, oh, bang, bang, and it's like, oh, okay. But Ashad actually, you know, he comes through and he literally grabs the soldiers and just pushes them back and that sort of thing. There was one bit, I don't know if you guys noticed, but there's a bit where he sort of grabs a soldier and then all of a sudden there's like that. And it's like, did they censor that? Was that a cut to say that, oh, actually, that was a bit too violent. We just cut that bit out. I don't quite know what the edit was for, but or if
when he was breaking into the prison.
Yeah, there's a guy, he sort of grabs one of them up against the wall, and as he moves against the wall, then suddenly there's like a sort of a flash, and then suddenly the scene slightly jumps.
Yeah, and the soldier's on the floor then at that
That's
point.
right, yeah.
It's exactly. A very quick cut. It's either a very quick, the soldiers drop, we just haven't seen it, or it was a cut to cut something nasty out.
Yeah.
I thought the cyber guy on the cyber leader on the train had got that kind of camp Chris Robbie cyber sass from Revenge, and he's a bit like, we will take what we want to. It's a bit kind of, oh, get you. I wanted him to have the hands on hip thing as well, because it would have just really just finished that off. It would. The doctor lies. They'd be great. I probably lapsed a little bit of Zippy there, but you know, man of 1,000 voices. Anyway, yeah, I suppose Ashad is that thing, isn't it? It's the eternal pertwee thing of having a little bit of face that is a bit more creepy, isn't it? I suppose it's the notion of seeing what's underneath them all. I mean, cyber conversion it's worse than unit chronology, isn't it? In some ways, how do they convert them? They just put them in a chair and flick the button, or they touch them, or something. It's kind of it's all sort of augmented from back in the day, I guess.
It's still, I mean, that scene, you can hear the screams in the background though. It's quite chilling.
It's all Tegan's fault. If they'd have checked her bag on the way in and said, what's this sort of evil deity that you got in at Tegan? It could have been prevented, couldn't it? All they need is a bag. I mean, even the British Library will check your bag when you go in. What about UNIT? Although UNIT, and this is one of the most glorious points of this whole thing, having survived death by dropping down the lift shaft, Case and Tegan can walk down the steps. The building can blow up behind them. This multi-story building that Ace had to hang glide off. And there's no rubble, and nothing comes towards them. A skyscraper has fallen down behind them, and they've just sort of walked down the steps away from it.
It was It was very Seventh Doctor walking away from the exploding tents in Greatest Show, wasn't it? They just casually strolled off as the building came down, and then went, "Oh, the TARDIS."
I can't help thinking that a building that big in that built-up an area taking a tumble down would have made a bit more of a mess.
Just a bit.
Yeah. It was special bricks, though, special unit bricks, deliberately designed to just fall and not bounce or have any smoke or dust in any way.
And so did, so did all the unit soldiers that Kate said, have me, not them, and they said, okay. Did they all die in Crumble, or did they get out, or did they?
They all died.
So I don't know. So many questions, but it's fine because we got to go to the Doctor Who alcohol support group.
Yay!
Oh, that was that was lovely. I have to say that was. You could. I was sat there watching that, because Graham introduces it, and I could hear Katie's laugh.
Yes. I thought, I know that Betty laugh.
I know that laugh, and I was just waiting for the camera to pan round, and then when you saw, William Russell, and it was just like, that was that was a bit fanboy gushy moment of like, they're there, and then But again, this is what my worst fears were not realised, because it fitted in really well with, Jodie was on her own by that point and about to regenerate, and then they cut to this scene, and I was just like goosebumps.
Quite sweetly, because there's a little video come out stays in the behind the scenes. Jodie went in on her day off to meet everybody because she wasn't filming. That's quite sweet.
That's cool. That's really nice.
Although I again, now this is another thing which hand in my fan card here, and things that I didn't know. I was like, Mel was left not in Spice World, in Space World. And it turns out I'm led to believe by higher authorities today that Sabalom Glitz dropped her back off on Earth, and I don't. Was this a big finish, or is this a new adventure? I don't know. And also, which version of Ace have we? Because Ace was like, we parted on bad terms, Doctor Who. Let's make up in the Dalek cavern, and I was like thinking, because some versions of Ace die, some versions go on to become Time Lords. There's a lot of Ace endings, and I was like, I didn't know which one were they. What was that?
Yeah, because the last we saw of them officially was walking off into the sunset and happily, strolling off together to have adventures. And now suddenly, like, oh, we've got business, we've got some sort of beef with each other. It's like, what's that?
You stepped on my toe, Professor, when we went in that bush. I hate you. and you ate my mother or something. I don't know. There must be enough. If you know, write it below. Are they going from a? How does she leave in Big Finish? Have they done that? I don't know. It's a sort of perpetual thing, I suppose, of how these things are. Because I know, talking to one of the girls that was in the scene, who shall be nameless, she said that one of the problems that they said, and it turned out actually Annika just didn't want to do it, but was that one of the sort of notions was that they said that she never ate, Polly and Ben hadn't ever ate, and it's like these stories come about, and if you've not read the comic strips, to my mind, that's a huge thing in that as a hardcore fan here, I'm asking these questions, and I should be able to go, oh, okay, well, Mel's there because when she left, she did this, and lovely to see it. Absolutely adore it. Do you know what I mean? That there are continuities, and then there are continuities, and it's kind of like I got that Tegan and Doctor Who had their little rift in the warehouse, but I didn't understand why we were meant to think, because the whole sort of story arc with Doctor Who making Ace sort of look up to her family and their mum and all that was resolved. That was all done with at the end of Fenric, and then Survival was sort of, we're all right now. So I didn't know where that had come from.
I took it as, because in the New Adventures she left twice. The first one was when because she said in the dialogue, she said, I didn't understand the weight that you had on your shoulders and the responsibility, and that kind of ties in with the reason why she first left the Doctor. Because
didn't they all start calling her McShane in the New Adventures?
Yeah.
They stopped calling her Ace, didn't they?
Yeah.
All very common.
But now Melanie's bush is canon. I'm also excited. It's one of those things, isn't it? It's like Polly Wright and things like that, where people are like, well, it only says it in the paperwork. It doesn't say it on screen. Now it says Mel Bush on the end credits, doesn't it?
Yeah. But someone also sadly pointed out online that they said, does that mean that Barbara is officially dead now?
Well, just because she wasn't there. Couples can do things independently.
Well, Was she
I mean-
home for tea or something?
She might have been on a package holiday with Dodo. I mean, it's kind of what there was a lot of talk online today about the chair with the laptop on,
yeah.
then who could symbolise, and obviously it was left to Sarah Jane. So a few people who are no longer with us that
Mm-hmm.
I would subscribe to the theory that was put to me by someone else in this household that maybe they were hoping to do a Zoom drop-in with someone with the laptop and it didn't come off, and so that's when the laptop was there.
Could be a deleted scene. Who knows? Maybe.
Or maybe, some clever fan at home, it's one of you, could put a laptop and a screen and use footage from someone else and just drop it into that scene seamlessly.
I have to say, I was really pleased that Jodie's regeneration took place outside the TARDIS, rather, because it's a bit, the end of every Doctor is like, I'm going to regenerate and blow the TARDIS up, and end up crashing. And so I felt it was really nice that she just went out onto the cliff top and regenerated there. I thought that's probably one of my favourite regeneration sequences now, of just her on the rock with her arms, out regenerating and the energy going out. I just thought that was a really nice thing, bearing in mind that the TARDIS at the beginning, of the regeneration, when she regenerated from Peter, threw her out.
And you almost feel that that's where it was destined to end at that stage, and that would have been the original recording, and that was the end of it. And then obviously the bit that was added on then afterwards was obviously, I think it was nicely timed in, but yeah, I think that was the end of the episode technically.
But then why did she choose Durdledore to regenerate on top of? I mean, isn't it a little bit dangerous, because after they regenerate, don't they always feel a little bit like, I feel a little bit dizzy or something? So she could have just, or he, when it regenerated, could have fallen in the water. And we know Durdledore is right around the corner from Lulworth Cove, which is Fenric. So, of course, if they had fallen in the water, we all know there's evil in the water.
Could have been the time to get Janet Hargreaves. What am I saying? Miss Hardacre back.
Yeah.
There's been trouble today, actually, hasn't there? Did you see on the news? There's been trouble at Lulworth Estate, so they did not give permission for that to be used as an actual Doctor Who standing on top of the Durdledore, because they don't want people going on there because you can fall off and die.
Wow.
Ooh.
Yeah, they don't want kamikaze fans being fished out the water because they've gone up there in their rainbow socks and done all that and then taken a tumble. Don't try it at home, folks. Don't try it at home.
Oh.
Regenerate safely.
Yes.
Do it like Pertwee. Do it on a nice carpet.
Or just fall on your face like Pertwee in Spearhead.
Or put on a wig like James and just roll the floor and hope for Kate O'Mara.
I do most nights.
Are we happy with the whole regeneration bit now, where they start regenerating and they go, you know what, I'm going to delay this and I'm going to go off and have some ice cream and have a chat and that sort of thing? Do you know, like with Tennant, where he went off and so forth? In the old series, obviously, the regeneration was coming, they regenerated, that was it. But now in the new series, they get to sort of start the regeneration, sort of go, oh, I'm stopping it. Wait, I want to go off and have a few, this, that, and the other. And then I'm going to sort of let go and release.
I don't know. I don't mind it too much. I mean, Tennant's extended regeneration, he goes and visits so many people, he's like hops backwards and forwards in the TARDIS. I think it was quite nice for Jodie to have that payoff with Yaz and then say, I want to do this on my own. Capaldi had an extended speech, didn't he, at the end, where he was talking, about, the next Doctor will be here in a minute, but I'm going to give you the rules. that Matt Smith had the whole Amy Pond coming down the stairs, and I think there isn't. I think it's very different to obviously regenerations of times gone past, but I think it's quite nice to give them that little moment to do their. I think it's now become more of a tradition to do their little speech at the end.
But they used to do that before they did it back in the day. Tom had a fall. He had a flashback through the BBC archives, did his goodbye thing, and then he regenerated. You didn't say, one moment, everyone, I'm just going to pop in the TARDIS and go and have a quick word with Leela, let her know that I love her, and then I'm going to pop along and see both Dr. Romanas, let them know that I love them still. Do you not? I think this is what Ben sort of inferring. Is it not? Doctor Who is meant to be a traumatic experience that he's been pushed to the point of death. He has to regenerate. He hasn't got time to pop to Budgeon's and get some snacks for the next regeneration and a bottle of wine. And he should be in peril of I'm about to change. I could get out a couple of great lines and hope that they work on a Forbidden Planet T-shirt and then regenerate.
I'm waiting for the Tag You're It T-shirt.
It's coming. I mean, because I think Tennant's regeneration really overstayed its welcome. There was that point where it was like, who else are you popping along to see now? I mean, Lady Christina waiting for you by the bus. I mean, come on, just get on the floor and change. Come on.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether you could have fit some of the stuff in with Yaz earlier on. And they could have had their scene at the start or something, or they could have done all that bit, the peace bit and the ice cream, and they could have said, you could have had let's have one more date, and then never getting it and have the tragedy of the regeneration before you could do that sort of thing, because things took. I don't know. It's become a thing, hasn't it? Because I think we've talked about regeneration in that Doctor Who used to just regenerate and then you get on with the next story. Whereas now, the last 20 minutes of any given story now have to be given over to lots of ethereal yellowing and.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, Yaz went rescued the Doctor, brought her inside, put her on the TARDIS floor, and then she goes, "Oh, I'm surrounded by all my fam," and then she's like, "Oh, I'm asleep," and then where's everyone gone? They buggered off. They just left me. So, I mean, they could have maybe done something there, as you said, but then it's just then it's the whole extended bit, and how much do you want to lengthen it all out before people go, come on, get on with it.
I didn't think it went on too long. Like you say, the Tennant one was like, Christ, it's a season in itself. So I'm just gonna go back and see every single character I've interacted with. Whereas I think. I love that scene on top of the TARDIS where they're just having an ice cream. There's just something really quaint and sweet about it, where she says, how many times you've saved this planet? And she's like, I've lost count, but why wouldn't I? And then that moment is gone. Yeah, sheds a tear. She says, I want to be on my own for the next bit. It doesn't. I don't feel it outstays its welcome. It's not protracted. It's not too. It doesn't feel like it's shoehorned in like the previous end scene with the two of them. I felt this was much more natural. I mean, they are really, really close friends in real life as well. So, it felt genuine, and I didn't feel, that it overstayed the welcome. It could have been Jodie going, "Oh, I just want to go back to meet Carvanista," and then I probably would have gone, "Oh, really?" It's like. What? But I think it was, at the end, it was just her and Yaz, and she let Yaz go, and then she chose, like you say, like it was meant to be. She chose where she was going to regenerate, so it wasn't like in the TARDIS blowing everything up. She chose to be on her own, standing on a rock.
And are we concerned that they've regenerated clothes? Yeah.
Well. This may be something to do with the next era and what may or may not have happened at the end.
But when she says "don't say goodbye," I wanted them to do the Marseillaise, say "good journey." I wanted that line. that's for fans of the 1980s He-Man, obviously. But yeah, because I'm not going to take a negative stance, but I just sort of think the Ninth Doctor, when he regenerated, I mean, obviously Billy and Chris didn't get on terribly well at that point. That was a really emotional one because it was literally horrible because he didn't want, and then it's quite brief, but it's quite intense, and it's the culmination of that setup and and he sacrificed his life for her and all that stuff, and that's a really powerful regeneration. And I don't know if we managed that level of upset or intensity. They've all felt a bit self-indulgent since that point. I really honestly would put my hand on my heart and say actually everything post Eccleston in the regeneration stakes has been a bit like, okay, you could do this briefly and really touch. You could do something really impactful and really sad. Or you could try and keep adding levels of sadness and, a crying puppy or something, and just keep showing things that you think people might be triggered by, rather than just doing it concisely and really well.
I don't think hers is sad, though. I don't.
No, well, that's the point. That's the point. It isn't sad.
She has that moment in the TARDIS where she says, I want more time. But I think when she regenerates, when she says, to Doctor whoever I'm going to be next, tag you're it. I think there's an optimism. It's like I'm passing over the torch. You do it. Run with it. Have fun, kind of thing. I think. With Tennant, it was all drawn out and stuff. When he regenerated, I just felt that she was just like, I've lived my best life. Here we go, kind of thing. I didn't feel it was that she felt sad about it at the end. She chose where she was going to do it, and she just did it. I felt there was nothing sort of protracted about it. I thought it was just like she was like, all right, here we go. Previously you've had the lectures about, it's like dying, but it's not like dying, and
the Master shot her, and it took a good while from the Master shooting her to induce the regeneration to actually regenerating. And you think, well, if you weren't that badly affected by what he did to you, then that's the problem with it. It's like if you're just holding off death long enough to regenerate, then that's the thing. But if you're going like, hang on, it's not like self-pleasuring. It's meant to be something that's kind of like a life and death thing here, isn't it? You're not holding back the release. You are just having to do what you do. And I don't know. I think the casual have a walk around the garden centre, do the week shopping, and make sure everything's set up just seems a bit weird.
But the whole Peter Capaldi one, he's regenerating for like 2 stories, isn't he? I mean, he's regenerating from the end of the season right through the Christmas special.
Oh, but that's Bobbins too, though, isn't it? Because then you get to have a special story with the First Doctor, who's also strangely now doing the same thing in a 3-minute gap in the 10th planet that's not there. That's all Bobbins. I don't take that away as being anything good, but it's I don't know. I think that if you look at the ones where it works, I mean, if Peter Davison dying from spectroxemia, lying on the floor as Nicola's boobs are upstaging him, if he'd have gone, what 1 minute, I could probably do with seeing how Adric's doing, or I could do with just dropping off and seeing whether Turlough got his mortgage. It's just like, I no, you're about to die. This is the dramatic impact here. This is what's happening.
Mind you, it would have been good if he'd said, I've just worked out how to save Adric, and then regenerated.
Who honestly in 1982 would have thought at some point in 2022, 40 years on BBC primetime, someone would say, thinking of Adric, aren't you? And they did. It's amazing. I mean, it's one of those things where they say, when you do you think people would still be interested all these years later? It is literally one of those moments that you would never, even when Doctor came back in like 2005, you would never gone, I'm sure in a few years' time they'll make a mainstream reference to Adric's death, featuring a returning companion from 1984. They're going to do it.
And sadly, Chameleon was overlooked once again.
Chameleon should have been the changing avatar that they were all handily used. Because I get why, because you want to have Janet and Peter, and you want to have so. But that thing that Doctor Who gave them a static charge, and all of a sudden they could see a avatar or something.
Yeah.
It's like going to Abba Voyage or something, but it follows you. If it fused and they got the wrong ones coming, because Janet obviously in the fix of the Sontarans, that could have flicked into the Sixth Doctor, couldn't it? So I haven't seen you since that nasty moment with the Sontarans in the console room. Was that last story? Oh no, hang on. That answers our question earlier. Is that within the sort of 3 weeks before she got fired, or did she just wear the outfit?
Yes, exactly. And got that haircut from hell, and then decided, oh, there we go. I'm just going to use that. That's probably why they fired her, because it's like you can't people on planes talking to people looking like that. Get out of here.
God, the backstory, great. So she was fired for and then she got 2 husbands and an adopted son. That was quite a throwaway thing, wasn't it? Like, I'm sure that'll be in a box for a long time.
I was going to say there was a big Finnish writer going, what?
that isn't what we had on our list for her when we killed her off in the last one, the first one that she did, because she never wanted to come back to Doctor Who because it's awful. Least said. Okay, well, Jason looks like he's ready to go to bed now.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm here.
Okay.
His hands glowing yellow.
Time to go.
Don't do it on the Durdle door, which always sounds a little bit lewd. Don't do it on the
You'll get
Durdle
into
door.
trouble for doing so.
So I think we've sort of pretty much covered all the excitements of Doctor Who and the power of the Doctor. Title's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah. What does it mean, really?
I mean, there's an energy crisis. It's actually insensitive to be calling it the power of the Doctor. The energy saver of the Doctor would have been much more friendly.
Yes.
Alternative energy sources, a thing that looks a bit like the Star Poet from Sarah Jane that we've got on the hard drive. That's what we need to power the country.
Well, that's spaghetti.
K9 could have been in it, couldn't he? I suppose K9 could have been at the gathering. He could have been on a chair, couldn't he?
Oh yeah, there was a definite missed opportunity there for sure.
I like to think Doctor Who dropped K9s off for most of them.
Yeah.
Some of them might still be in transit. I mean, do you think how long Sarah Jane took before she found hers? Some of them could just be lost in the mail. Mail might not have left a forwarding address and it's somewhere out in the post.
Well, with the recent strikes, just can't tell.
Yeah. Right. So, okay. In final judgment, because I think we are. I would say that Lovartzi. I can never say the name. Lovartzi. That's who do the scarves and the jumpers. They must have been thrilled. That must have been like, yes, the cosplayers are gonna love us. Come to our website, 10% off. Use VRP code. So. Anyway, are we going to go for whether Doctor Who and the power of the Doctor was it a hit, a miss, or a maybe?
Shall I go first?
Go on, Tegan.
Okay. Yeah. Do you know what? All points, all sort of Chibnall-esque points aside, I watched it. I enjoyed it. I got goosebumps from it, and I can overlook bits that happen in it because actually the main characters do get a payoff, and some of the performances were amazing, and some of the little scenes, and maybe if you're not a fan you'd be like, I don't understand what's going on, but for someone who grew up with these doctors and everything else, it was lovely. So for me, it was a hit.
Yeah, I agree. I agree as well. I was very satisfied with it. Again, same sort of thing as you said, James. ignoring all the plot problems, the plot points, you know, the fact that a lot of things didn't make sense, and a lot of the time you think, well, you know, where is this going? Why did they do this? Why did they do that? It was just nice just to watch it and not think, oh, you know, I have to have a lot of foreknowledge of things, or the fact that, you know, it's frustrating you. You know, I was just happy to sit back, watch it, enjoy the cameos, enjoy the scenes, enjoy where they're going, and not thinking, looking at my watch, thinking, oh God, is it over yet? How much more of this have we got to go? So I was really happy with it. So I give it a thumbs up, 2 thumbs up.
Oh, I was going to say, you're giving it 2 thumbs up there, yeah?
Is that allowed?
Don't make the JNT reference. Whatever you do, don't make the JNT reference.
Well, thumbs up are going well here. I'm going to come in and just give a very brief summary, actually, because everybody said everything that I would actually have said about this story as we've come through it. And actually, it was quite nice to sit down and watch Doctor Who and not think, oh, I'm not going to like this, because I did, and came into it with, as I said, a really low expectation of what I was expecting. But yeah, big thumbs up. I'm going to give 1. I'm not going to give 2. Thumbs up from me.
But the funny thing about last night, because the ratings will come through, so Doctor Who got about 3.5, peaking at 4 million viewers, and the Larkin's got about 3 million. Nearly 7 million people watching Peter Davison and Bradley Walsh across 2 channels at the same time. They were competing with each other on primetime television. I mean, Doctor Who could be bad sometimes, but I'm never going to have to sit through the Larkins, am I? I mean, that's just that's a definite. Yeah. No. Do you know what? I think maybe it's because the last 2 have been so. The Sea Devils was atrocious. Maybe because that was so unbelievably bad, and we did almost die through the flux. I think expectations were so chronically low, and there was a big shot of nostalgia, which, you know, right or wrong, it just made it an easy watch and lovely to see, you know, so many familiar faces that we know and love. It was bobbins. It made no sense, but it was fine. I'm giving it a thumbs up.
Yay!
Hey.
The fun bobbins.
Fun old bobbins, which is what we are. Okay, fine. Next time I'll put the Rasputin wig on, just for fun. I couldn't do the contact though.
I'd like to point out in the trailer preview we did, I actually said, and the Master as Ra-ra-rasputin. If people want to go back and watch that bit, there we go. So I'd like to say that, yes, I predicted they would use the song. So there.
And I love that bit where the Dalek and the Cybermen. Yeah, brilliant. Love that bit. Absolutely love that bit.
Yeah. We never talked about that, did we? We never talked about that whole sequence.
No,
darling, I mentioned that. I mentioned it.
Did you? Did you really?
Yes, I did. I said what I said. If you wind the video back, I said that Sasha's muted performance and the way he brought it down meant that when he did the dance, that it was more impactful and he could get away with the high camp of it.
Yeah. So Ben, are you offering to do the dance at Pandorica?
No comment.
What I would say is that I was quite looking to see Richard Dempsey, because I'm a little child that loved Narnia, and he's
yes.
And I felt it was a bit like, it was a nice part, but the sort of the Nicholas and Alexandra sort of part of it felt like it could have had another scene or a little bit more to it. I think that was a bit of a sort of lost opportunity, because the train guard people all got a nice little bit, and I thought Nicholas and Alexandra. Anyway, we have said whether we liked it or not, so it's academic. Thank you very much for joining me, ladies. Even Jason is going to.
Thank you. Pleasure as always.
Yes, indeed. Thanks very much.
And thank you very much.
Oh, fantastic. I'm off to put a little sticky label on with my name and see whether I can get on the Doctor Who.